When we think of slavery in America, certain images often dominate the conversation. Cotton fields, forced labor, brutal overseers, and the unspeakable abuse endured by enslaved black women, especially at the hands of white men. But there's a much less discussed, deeply unsettling truth, one that history books often leave in the shadows. What about the enslaved black men? What about the young white women raised in the plantation system who exploited their power behind closed doors? This is the hidden story of sexual abuse, not just by white men, but by white women, especially young women who, in the years before marriage, used enslaved black men to explore desire, test boundaries, and exercise control, all under a society that let them get away with it. Let's get started. In the Antebellum South, white women were taught to be modest, pure, and obedient. They were groomed to become wives, mothers, and the moral core of their families. But those ideals were only part of the story. On the plantation, every white woman stood above any enslaved person. Even a teenage girl held more legal authority than a grown black man. She could command, punish, even destroy him with a word, and no one would question it. While her own body was policed by fathers and future husbands, she held complete dominion over the bodies of those she was told were property. And for some, that power extended into the bedroom. When we talk about sexual violence during slavery, we rightfully focus on the horrific abuse of black women. But the trauma of enslaved black men has largely been erased from public memory. Why? Because they were seen as strong, stoic, emotionless. Because society could not and would not imagine black men as victims, especially victims of white women. And yet, it happened, not once, not rarely, often. And for the enslaved men, these moments weren't about pleasure or intimacy. They were about survival, about submission without a voice. Imagine a plantation house, grand, silent at night. Inside, a young white woman in her early teens or 20s prepares for bed. She has personal maids, servants, and enslaved attendants at her beck and call. One of them, a young black man, perhaps a few years older, brings in firewood, or draws her bath, or turns down her sheets. He doesn't meet her eyes. Not because he's shy, but because eye contact could be seen as insubordination, or invitation, or threat. And sometimes, she chooses him. She calls for him again, at night, when everyone is asleep. He comes, knowing what it might mean, knowing he can't say no, knowing that even if she wants something forbidden, it's his life that will pay the price. She has power. He has none. She closes the door softly. The room glows dim under candlelight. He stands still, silent, barely breathing. She walks toward him, eyes curious, not scared, just sure of herself. She tells him, "Take off your shirt." He doesn't speak. He obeys. Her fingers move across his chest, slowly, like she's studying a sculpture she's not supposed to touch. She shivers, not from fear, but anticipation. She's never done this before. Not with anyone, and especially not with someone like him. He is still, stone-faced. Not because he wants to be, but because he has to be. She leans in, smells sweat, skin, heat, something rough, something real. Her lips brush his collarbone. She wants more, and he lets her. Not because he agrees, not because he desires, but because he has no choice. Many of these young women knew nothing of love. Their marriages were arranged. Their bodies were bound by social rules. But with enslaved men, men who couldn't object, they found a space to explore what no suitor or fiancé would allow. And society let them. No one punished them. Not really. Because what happened in private stayed there. Because these women were white, and white women didn't do such things. At least, not publicly. The myth of purity remained intact. While behind closed doors, exploitation wore the mask of innocence, Historians like Stephanie Jones Rogers have shown that white women were far from passive participants in slavery. They bought, sold, and punished enslaved people. They also exploited them in every way imaginable. While it's harder to find written accounts of sexual abuse by white women, clues remain. Letters, diaries, testimonies from enslaved men later in life. Whispers in the records that speak louder when we're ready to hear them. The silence wasn't because it didn't happen. The silence was by design. She pulls her nightgown back on, fixes her hair, straightens the blankets. He stands in the corner, still half naked, waiting for her word. "Go," she says. He nods, turns to the door, exits without a sound. Outside, the air is cold, his heart colder. He walks back across the field, each step heavier than the last. He doesn't cry. He can't. There's no room for grief in survival. And tomorrow night, she might call again. Let's be clear. There is no consent under slavery. None. Even if an enslaved man appeared willing, his life was not his own. His body was not his own. What might look like pleasure was really performance, a shield, a strategy. And even today, some argue, if he enjoyed it, it wasn't abuse. But that's not just wrong. It's erasure. It's ignoring pain because it doesn't fit the narrative. Some white women, after marriage, found themselves disappointed. Their husbands lacked the fire, the power, the danger they'd tasted in secret. Some continued the abuse, sneaking behind their husbands' backs, risking scandal for a feeling they'd grown addicted to. Because once you've exercised complete control over someone's body, it's hard to give that up. This history is not about guilt, it's about truth. It's about recognizing that white supremacy was upheld by both men and women. That black men, like black women, were victims, not just of labor exploitation, but of sexual violence. Their pain matters. Their silence deserves to be broken. Until we face the whole truth, healing remains impossible. If this video taught you something new, subscribe to Life Unveiled. Help us continue unearthing the stories that were buried for too long. Why do you think this part of history is still so taboo? Do you think society is finally ready to talk about white women's role in slavery? Honestly, hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. Because Black history is American history, and every piece of it deserves to be told.